I'm Audrey Bilger. I'm the president of Reed College, and I'm so happy that you all could be with us this morning. I myself have been at Reed for 2 years. This is the second year of my presidency, and prior to coming to Reed, I mentioned to those of you who were here, I spent 25 years in Los Angeles as a professor at Claremont McKenna College for 22 of those years, and then as the chief academic officer at Pomona College. So I, coming to Reed, know very well what a special place this is, and I'm happy to be answering questions for you today. And I know you're making a big decision, and as Milyon said, we're here to see what we can do to help you understand Reed better.
I'm really happy to have you all here. I'll say a few words at the end about the selection process and what I think is next for you. A common theme to begin with is really about COVID. Mm-hmm. And, I think there's two parts of it. Families are sort of curious about what our plans are for next year and how we'll manage the college in a COVID environment. And some families are hoping we'll reflect on this year and talk about how it went and compared to other schools, what we think went well, and some of the things we'll hold on to.
We've done, I think, a really good job at putting together a team that meets on a regular basis, weekly, sometimes more than weekly, to sift through all the information that we're receiving about the state of the virus in Oregon, about the risks, about what we need to be doing to keep the community safe. We brought in a staff epidemiologist early in the pandemic so that we have expertise advising us as we make decisions. We have been testing regularly, and we anticipate that we will be doing some versions of testing as we open up in the fall. I want to say that it's, among all the things that have been gratifying about this year at Reed, we have managed to avoid any major outbreaks. Mm-hmm. Our students have been fantastic. Last summer, when we were planning our opening, and we opened with a hybrid model, so we brought students back to campus. The classes were about half online only, about half in person fully, or with in-person components. But there was so much questioning of us from many places saying, "Oh, you can't bring students back to campus; they'll never adhere to safety protocols. Mm-hmm. One party and you're sunk." And these students were just responsible. They care for one another. They care for our community. They understood fully what it means to take care, and they did, and they have. So our plan is to be open in the fall and to be having in-person classes and connections, and to repopulate the campus even more fully.
We haven't had any cases of COVID in the last 2 months on campus. To let our families know, we've taken our residential hall offline. So if students did need isolation or residence hall to be safe, keep themselves safe and keep other students safe, we were able to do that. Our rooms were offered in singles. We had a really cool app where you could order food online and pick it up to go. But the other part of that was really making sure that students stayed connected, because COVID is all about distancing, right? And so what are some of the ways you found that we intentionally maintained community during this time?
When we were considering how we would come back together, the thing that guided us was that this is what we do well: in-person, personal connection, models of instruction and of community. And so, coming back together, one of the things that I would say we all got used to more quickly than we would have imagined is being on campus masked outdoors or in other smaller settings. Striking up conversations when I first started going out and around felt a little weird, but now we wear masks. But I would say that our student life team is really awesome, and put together programming that was both virtual programming, game nights, and in-person activities. They brought a roller derby a group to skate in the parking lot, something that you could do distanced, masked. They brought craft kits to students and set up outdoor events where students could paint by numbers or just relax. And then I would say too that faculty also were engaged in putting together kind of virtual social events. So there was a real connection that was, we fostered connections, I think, throughout this past year in really creative ways.
Mm-hmm. And now heading into the fall, what's our plan?
Our plan is to open back up, and I brought up the risk assessment group and their regular meetings and their assessment of data because I will note that we anticipate having in-person classes. We may have guidelines that say we need to be masked with certain kinds of distance. We'll be following whatever the guidelines are that will keep the community safe. I imagine, though, that we'll be able to see more students on beautiful days. These past weeks, Milyon can attest to what joy it brings to see students out on the Great Lawn, enjoying the day. You can throw a ball and be safe, and they were doing those kinds of things. We're not going outside of the guidelines. In fact, we've observed even stricter guidelines than the state required us to this past year. That being said, I do believe that there is going to be more openness and more if to do things in the regular fashion. We've learned this year that we can turn on a dime if classes need to go online because of some event or some sort of health notice. We can do that, and so our faculty are more prepared than ever to be able to shift modalities as needed. And so I feel confident that we will continue to do what we need to do to be safe, and we will experience more opportunities for togetherness.
Folks really want to know, how open is our academic program in terms of thought? And we have a parent who's really wondering if this is going to be a place while we support students of different cultural backgrounds, different ethnic backgrounds, different walks of life, different gender identities. Will in the classroom there'll still be diversity of thought? Do we funnel students all to one common understanding? And particularly the inclusivity of ideas irrespective of identity politics is sort of the way that the parent has framed it.
Yeah, this is not a new question, parents. So I started my career in the academy as a graduate student in the 1980s. I don't know if we coined the term culture wars at that time, but these discussions have been going on for quite some time. My first job after I got my PhD was at Oberlin College. So going Oberlin, Claremont to Reed, I've seen a pretty wide spectrum of liberal arts colleges, and I can say everything's not harmonious all the time at any campus. And sometimes we get painted with broad brushes in the public sphere about disagreements that we have. But what I've found is that in a small community, we will wrestle with the disagreements. We will figure things out. So the model, one of the dominant models at Reed for the classroom is the conference model, which is about discussion, which is about co-creating knowledge. And I think that, again, any classroom, as somebody who's taught for decades knows, can feel different depending on who's in the room. But in general, these models where the table is open and students speak are the best bet for having the kind of open discourse and free discussions that I've seen anywhere.
What is the financial condition of the college? How is the endowment budget? How is the endowment doing? Are we healthy?
I realize that as we look at the landscape of small liberal arts colleges, we are seeing some colleges fall by the wayside. So I can say I'm confident in Reed's future. Our endowment is strong. And the other thing that we have done throughout the pandemic is that we've managed our resources responsibly. We've had some unforeseen things happen to us. We'll be embarked on a project of building a gym because we had a winter storm that took down our gyms. But we have resources. We will be able to put together resources to get these things done. And we have a really loyal alumni and donor base that continues to support the college. And when you think about that support, as many of you know, that's that's for the now, but it's really for the continuity and the future of the college.
Right.
And Reed is doing quite well by all measures.
So Audrey, I'm going to answer a few questions because I think these might be quick hits. How much can I expect my cost of attendance to increase at Reed each year? That's something that we do really well. So some of the best financial aid you'll receive in the country. What you get now, you can anticipate that you'll continue to receive that. Your financial aid adjust. Let's say you hit the lottery and that's great, but then we might make adjustments to your financial aid. On the other side of that, if you have unfortunate circumstances that hit your family, medical expenses, a job, we will also make adjustments that way. So we're committed to meeting your full financial need. And so your package changes along with your circumstances. What percentage of our students are majoring in studio art? One of the things that I talk about, every academic program here makes an incredible impact. We talk about our PhD production per capita. Our linguistics department, which is one of our smallest departments at Reed, produces more linguistics majors per capita than almost any other school in the nation.
I'll often want to stress that at a liberal arts college, the what students get isn't necessarily a major. They may label what they do according to a field. They may get very focused. They may decide to pursue that in graduate school. But for all students who come through a liberal arts college, they journey around the disciplines. We're designed that way. And because we're a small community, because of word of mouth, a student takes a class, they love it, they tell another student, they take that class. The likelihood of students moving through arts programs, regardless of whether that's their area, is greater at Reed than it would be at a much larger institution. And as a result of that, our hope, our expectation is that we have creative scientists and analytical artists and writers and thinkers, and there's just real energy around that. So I'll often say to parents the question of, what are you going to major in, which is usually followed by, if you were an audience, you could shout this out to me, what are you going to do with that? We're always thinking at Reed and in a liberal arts college about how to kind of move away from that, because after a certain point in your life, and we all remember, nobody asks you what you majored in, and your life isn't necessarily bound by what you majored in. So I'm not, by the way, dismissing that or poo-pooing. I'm only saying that the point of a liberal arts model is a sort of broad-based education that allows you to explore and build your own adventure.
Can you talk a little bit about what separates Reed from other liberal arts colleges?
We have a reputation as the most intellectual liberal arts college in the country, and that is well deserved. Students come here because they take learning seriously, because they care deeply about learning. There's a real passion for the exploration of ideas and engaging deeply with classwork. And I think that that's more vibrant at Reed than any other place that I've been. We have world-class faculty. Reed dedicates resources to making sure that our faculty are able to thrive in their research, and our faculty are committed to thinking of the connection between their research and their students' classroom experience and what they're bringing to the classroom. So one of our faculty members says, teaching is research is teaching. These things are all bound up together. So the quality of our faculty, I think, would be the second thing I'd highlight. And then the location. We're in the Pacific Northwest. We have a gorgeous campus. We have a wildlife area right in the center of our campus. The canyon is one of our great assets. And so, something I have noted during this interval of weird separation is that we have found more solace outdoors. And this is a place where, whether it's looking around at the cherry blossoms or the autumn leaves, or looking to the east and seeing Mount Hood with its spectacular snow-capped peaks, there's the sublime and the beautiful here. And it's a really gorgeous place to learn and create together.
Folks are kind of curious. There are colleges that are making some decisions about, vaccine requirements. We know what we're doing now. We all know we're thinking about that. Do you have a bit to say about that?
I'll say that we're in active conversation about this and about what it would look like to require vaccines and how we want to implement that. And all of our COVID decisions have been made carefully, not looking to see what others are doing, but learning also from what's happening around the country. And so I anticipate, Milyon, that we'll have announcements about this coming out within the next week or so about whether we'll be requiring vaccines for students. It's something, though, that our risk assessment group is looking at closely.
What are some of the ways Reed is working towards diversity and inclusion? And are there any resources for Indigenous students? And I could touch on that one if you'd like, but I'll let you start.
We have a multicultural resource center, an Office of Institutional Diversity. The Dean for Institutional Diversity is on my cabinet, which means that this is somebody who meets with me and with the larger leadership team on a weekly basis. She and I meet every week and more to talk about what needs to be done, what we're hearing from students. I would say that we like any campus that's doing really good work in this area, we're learning, we're listening all the time, and we're making changes based on what we hear. And I'd say for everybody, this last year has been a kind of solidifying of the will of everybody who does this work to do everything we can to accelerate that work and to keep it going. And so, something I would note, for instance, as we think about the curriculum and what's happening in the classroom, we have a Center for Teaching and Learning. Our faculty engage with that center to learn about inclusive practices in the classroom, to get better at having uncomfortable conversations sometimes around race and ethnicity. And in the case of acknowledging privilege and whiteness and what has that meant in individual disciplines. And we're going to continue to evolve and grow, and that's been a priority for me since I walked in the door. This is work I did in the Claremonts. I was the faculty member who advised the Queer Student Alliance. I was the faculty member who students would come to talk about feeling outside or other. And I bring that to my presidency to say, I don't want any students to feel that sense of being outside. So at the same time, I just want to note, we're doing stuff that's hard, that isn't, this is, we look around and the country isn't getting this right, but we have better tools to be able to get things right. And so I'm ever hopeful.
Audrey, can you talk a little bit about how our grading system works? And when you're done, I'm going to share out an article that I think you and I are both familiar with.
Yeah. Well, so at Reed, the faculty do not give letter grades out to students. Instead, they write comments and feedback. And a student there is a letter grade, it exists, it's turned in, it's recorded, and students are free to request that letter grade if they want to see that. And it's not really about that grade at the end, right? And I think that for the faculty here to be able to focus on the feedback, it's both onerous, it's more time intensive to provide that feedback than to simply put a grade on something. But it's also, I think, it's just more organic and it's more individual to the student. So it's a feature of Reed that I found really appealing when I first learned that this is how Reed handles grades. And I will also note that it does mean that we're a college that has resisted what my colleges before talked about all the time, which is grade inflation. We really haven't seen that. So the grades are more the grades, and then the feedback is what helps the students understand how they're progressing.
Recently we've had someone describe our grades quite differently. A response that our dean made to the Wall Street Journal was really pivotal here, but can you tell our families a bit about this?
Sure. There was an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal that irresponsibly said that there are these colleges that just don't even care about grades. They don't care about grades. They don't give them. Reed doesn't give grades, and this is a sign of the sort of watering down of higher ed. And our dean of the faculty educated this person who I will note didn't do their research. Right? If they'd done their research, they would have understood that that's not how grades work at Reed. And I love her response, which is to say, no, we do give grades, and we do have measurements of learning, but we also want to separate that kind of pursuit of the grade from the pursuit of knowledge and helping students really understand on their own terms what they're learning.
One of the ways I describe it, if you're a student and you walk into the room of your faculty member and say, hey, what's my grade? They might ask you why you want your grade. And you might say something like, I want to know how I'm doing. They'll say, sit down, let's talk about how you're doing. and it becomes a conversation. And I think it's something that first year students really have to get used to. And I think after that first semester, you could not imagine doing it any other way. It's quite liberating. And I think what happens as a result, based on my experience, Reed students have a great ability to capture and hold on to theoretical ideas and concepts that doesn't feel like this consuming of information, spitting it out and excising it from your brain. It really becomes a part of their learned experience. One of the fears that I often address for families, oh no, does this mean they won't get into grad school? Does this mean that an authentic grade means they won't be competitive? And our numbers just completely dispel that in terms of PhD production, Fulbright and fellowship awarded for our students, research dollars. Reedies are front and center in their field and also in their profession. They're entrepreneurs. They start businesses. They have these creative ideas they pursue. And so I just want to make sure to take that off the table for families as a concern. Audrey, I love questions like this, but I think it might be how I'm built in terms of, our futuristic goals and what's ideal for us. But I love this question. It's really simple. What is your number one goal for the next 4 years, and what is needed to accomplish it?
A important goal that the college has been working toward in the past few years is to get the model for student success and support for students even more fine-tuned. And what we're really working to do is, year by year, semester by semester, help students process what am I learning? How does that translate into work that I might do in the future, and put it all together. So it's a highly individualized model. And what I hope with something like the Center for Life Beyond Reed is that we can continue to grow that resource to ensure that every student who comes through Reed is able to have internships, get research experiences, and also avail themselves of abundant resources to figure out what they want to do next. We're on the right path with that, and it's a matter of continuing to scale it so that even though we're small, that kind of wraparound work can take time. I'd also say that we're working right now to ensure that we're integrating in the right way the data science and quantitative fields across the curriculum, and to ensure that those fields thrive and succeed as they grow. And we're also, I know that I might have been asked about one thing, but I feel like Reed is doing really good work in terms of interdisciplinary programs. And when I say good work, I want to emphasize that I've been at schools that created just a sort of plethora of interdisciplinary programs without a map for how it all fits together. And Reed has taken some care in thinking about interdisciplinary programs. We have an interdisciplinary program in environmental studies. We have a critical race and ethnic studies program. We're starting to think about some of the other ways that fields cross, and there are a handful of other interdisciplinary programs. But I want to see us figure out how the whole thing fits together, and that's a big goal for me and for the faculty.
Folks are curious about our orientation, how we help people transition to Reed. They're curious this year in particular how we plan to do this. Can you just hit on some of the things we like to think about in terms of helping students transition from high school to Reed?
We provide resources that help you think about how to live on a college campus, be with one another. This year, so during the pandemic, we did our orientation online, and we learned that we were able to provide content earlier that we're going to continue to do. This summer, and probably well into the future. So for instance, this summer, we'll be doing some academic advising with faculty members over the summer and helping students get registered for at least some of their classes, which is, again, it's huge. My history at liberal arts colleges, students arrive, they register. And I think that for you all, that will, that makes you feel a little bit more comfortable as you arrive on campus.
The great books tradition at Reed, particularly in the humanities department. We know that we've made some adjustments to the curriculum. If we were to talk about the way in which we've made those adjustments, what our goal was, and also how that's sort of centered to this idea of liberal arts on campus, but leads folks to other paths. Can you talk a bit about that? And I'm combining a few questions that we've been asked.
No, that's great. Well, so we've been involved in robust discussions of the humanities curriculum since before I arrived at Reed. And what I would say is that these are not static. So the syllabus that is taught in the Hum 110 class that goes through the students' first year was adjusted a few years back to create new modules in Mexico City and the Harlem Renaissance. And as those modules have been implemented, there's student feedback, helping us think through what can be done to ensure that we're able to deliver that material in ways that are intellectually comprehensive for the students and that are really responsive to what's being introduced when you change the content of a class. Mm-hmm. So I'd say it's a like so many things, it's in motion still. Something that came out of this year, we have in student government a student committee that advises the academic program, and the students asked that we pilot a program for the coming year. Well, they might not have said pilot, that does seem very administrative, right? But we are piloting a program next year that will have students attached to some of the Hum sections to be observers of the class, to be able to tell the faculty member, I noticed when you talk about this is what is happening to the class, or did you notice that you said that thing? So that faculty will be able to think a little bit more about how they're approaching material that could be charged and complex. So I think we're just gonna keep doing round after round of making changes and improvements and being responsive to our students throughout.
Often as a high school senior, you've seen movies about college, you've seen TV shows about college, and it's really easy to get excited about that first year. Where are you going to live? Are you going to have fun? Who are you going to meet? What are those classes going to be like? What I would invite you to do is to think about your fourth year at college. Think about yourself as a senior. Now that puts you in a very different place. I believe that version of you, that senior version of you, probably looks a bit different when you consider that version of you that's gone to Reed, and perhaps that version of you that has gone to another school. And your goal is to find out which of those two individuals you're most excited about. You will then reflect on the information you've learned and consider it more deeply and in a different way. And while this might stretch your capacity, I know it's within you to think about how you will develop over the course of 4 years, because that is truly the goal of this 4-year degree. And that's going to help you figure out if Reed is a place where you want to be for 4 years. We feel confident about that version of you, but you also should feel confident about that version of you. So that's what I'll encourage you to do all in the end of this weekend and also next weekend, when you're going to be making really important decisions.
One of the most inspirational elements of being attached to college campuses is to be able to see young people at the launching pad of your life. And for me, I mentioned that I have always taught first-year students when I was doing classroom teaching, and then to see them walk across the stage 4 years later, or to see them in classes successively and watch how students change and grow, that is amazing. And then I also want to note that it doesn't end there in terms of the relationship that you have to the college or to your faculty. I have close friendships with former students going back to the very earliest days of my teaching. And that's because you make connections that last.